Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel and today I am going to be doing my March reading wrap up for March 2026. Yeah, I've got a lot of books to talk about because I haven't done a wrap up in a while, and I'm going to wrap up the entire month, and I did read 9 whole books in the month of March, so I've been kind of flying through them. In large part because I got several library books towards the end of the month, and when I have a bunch of library books, it's like I'm on a deadline, and so I speed up my reading for a bit. And also, I am going to be traveling for work in the next week, and so I wanted to make sure all my library books were completed and returned before I travel. I also want to say that I will probably be skipping the extra midweek video this week because of the traveling. I've got just too much other stuff to do that is going to make it difficult for me to get 2 videos out this week. So we'll do this video this weekend. I'll do another video next weekend, but we're just going to skip them sort of midweek. I've been doing a midweek movies, like a little movie review. I'm probably going to skip that this week. I'm not stopping watching movies. I just don't have time to film and edit another video this week because work travel I'm busy. I've got a lot of stuff to prepare for that, so just don't have the time. But I do want to get my March wrap-up video done, and I have 9 books to talk about. I do have my laptop with me because I want to make sure I talk about all of them. I don't want to forget anything, so I do have that pulled up so I can look. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. Let's see here. The first book that I would like to talk about, I'm just going to go in order of when I finished them. So the first book I finished in the month of March was Dragon Haven by Robin Hobb. This is the Rainwild Chronicles Volume 2, and I am continuing to thoroughly enjoy The Realm of the Elderlings. This is a great series. I don't know that I want to say a whole lot about this. I will do probably like a wrap-up of the entire 4-book Rainwild Chronicles when I'm finished with it. But I've already said a little bit about how these first 2 books have gone and how much I'm enjoying them, especially sort of from a thematic perspective, and the way in which Hobb is really focusing on the POVs of various kinds of outsiders, societal outsiders and pariahs. I really like that. I like what she's doing with all of these characters, and as always, the world building is exquisite, and I'm really enjoying it. So that is really about all I want to say right now about Dragon Haven specifically and about the Rainwild Chronicles, but needless to say, I am still working my way through this series, and it's still like a solid, every book in it is still a solid 5 stars. It's great. I love Hobb's prose. I love her world building. I love her character work. It's all great. So that is Dragon Haven. The second book I finished in the month of March was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is another book that I'm probably not going to say too much about, simply because I already did a standalone review of this book on my channel. I'll probably link to that review if you want to watch it. But I did enjoy it. It was fun. It was a good time. I had a good time with it. And I had a good time with the movie as well. I read this book before the movie came out, then I watched the movie. They're both a good time. So that's what I have to say about Project Hail Mary. The third book that I finished this month was The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. I really enjoyed this book as well. I don't know that I need to say a whole lot about this book, just because it's very popular. Lots of people have been reading it, and It is, you know, kind of a Booktube darling. But I will say that I found the world building very satisfyingly crunchy, and the characters are really solid, and I definitely am looking forward to seeing where this goes in the second volume, in the sequel, whenever that comes out, because it's been it was a good time. I had a good time with this book. Again, I don't know that I really have anything super interesting or profound to say about the Raven Scholar that other people haven't already said, but it was definitely a good time, and it's a fun new world. I'm not usually a big fan of like the competition style stories around a competition. That's not usually a big thing for me, but I liked this one because it's so political, and because it's so the sort of theology and the world building of the deities is so interesting that I wasn't too bothered by the competition. I will say the fight scenes, not great. I think that is definitely something that Antonia Hodgson could work on. She tends to really sort of skim over the action scenes themselves, which I think I can kind of understand. She clearly has other priorities than writing a well-done action scene, but that's clearly a strong weakness. That's clearly a weakness that even I noticed, and I'm not usually a big, like, action scene kind of person, but even I noticed that as I was reading, that, like, she really tends to gloss over, like, the fights. And again, like, that would, for me, would probably be the most boring part anyway, but, like, you can write a decent fight scene that's not super long, and she, you know, that's definitely something that I noticed kind of brought it down for me a little bit occasionally, or it's sort of, it's like there's a couple of times where a fight itself is sort of built up into this big thing, and then she kind of glosses over it in a single paragraph, and it's like, well, that was it just feels a little anticlimactic. It feels like it doesn't land the way that you might want it to dramatically within the structure of the narrative, I guess is what I'm saying. That's sort of my criticism, I guess, of the Raven Scholar. But otherwise, it was really fun. Again, the characters are really interesting. I'm very invested in them, and the world building is great, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So, the next book I finished was The Lady of the Lake by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the final book in the main Witcher saga. It's also quite long. I've just got a couple more prequel books to read, and then I will be completely done with all of the Witcher books as of now. And yeah, I mean, again, this is one where I'm going to do a video once I've finished all of the books. I'm going to do a video talking a little bit more in depth about this series and what I like about it and what appeals to me about it. I will say this final book is definitely a little bit meandering, but I like that. I think in a novel, for me at least, in a novel, it's easier for a writer to get away with that in a novel than it is for like a filmmaker to get away with it in a movie. Because like Sapkowski clearly has things to say about different things, right? About war, and about the cyclical nature of history, and about the nature of storytelling, and the creation of legends and myths, and how that works and operates in a society over time. And so, like, there's more to it than just the core story of Geralt and Yennefer and Ciri. That's still here, and that is still the core of it, but he definitely goes off in some other directions at various points. And personally, I think it's very well done, generally speaking, and I like it. But, you know, if you're not interested in the things he wants to say, then you might find a problem with some of it, or you might not like it as much. But generally, I quite like it. I like what Sapkowski has to say. I think he has a lot of interesting things to say, and he says them very well, in my opinion. So I have no serious problems with how he does anything in here or wraps anything up. Again, I will talk a little bit more in depth about the Witcher books as a whole, and, you know, just individually when I do that video. Probably, I don't know, it might be sometime this month, it might not be until May. It depends on how long it takes me to finish the last 2 books. But yeah, it's good. I like the Witcher books. I think they're interesting. They're very fun. The characters are great. Sapkowski's a good writer. It's a good time. So there's that. And then we're gonna get into some more library books. I did read The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. This was a very, very good book. It's very dark. It goes to a lot of dark places. But I quite enjoyed it. It's very much a book that's about, again, it's about sort of cycles of violence and the cyclical nature of abuse and the intergenerational nature of abuse and how that is perpetuated, and the confluence of abuse and power, right? And the way that power creates abuse. Absolute power is a deeply corruptive and corrosive thing, morally, psychologically, emotionally, and that's what The Poet Empress is really doing. That's what it's really doing, for me at least. That's what I took away from it. And just like, you know, absolute monarchy itself is just a bad system for everybody involved. And Shen Tao really explicates that in a way that still manages to be lush and engaging and a kind of page turner that really kept me interested and really kept me engaged until the very end. And there's definitely like some twists and turns that the story takes where I'm like, I didn't see that coming. So it was quite good. One of the best debuts I've read in a long time. So yeah, The Poet Empress, excellent book. And then the next book that I finished is another really, really excellent debut novel, and that is The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. So this is also kind of a historical fantasy, but it's on a very different kind of context and different kind of vein from The Poet Empress. But our main character, Sebastian, he's got a companion who is with him all the time, and he is also immortal, and they've been together for thousands of years, potentially well over 1,000 years. And he is investigating the beast of Gévaudan, which is a famous late 18th century legendary werewolf case in France. And this book was just a bloody, gory, sexy, fun time. And I really, really like the characters. And I really like the POVs. I really like the narrative voice that Sebastian has. And I also really like the narrative voice that Livia has, who is our other sort of narrator, POV narrator. And it's really engaging. It's often quite funny. It's also often quite sad, and again, I think it's just really engaging. Like, Cameron Sullivan has created some really riveting characters and has done his world building job so well that I would read 40 more books about these characters, and I believe he is intending to write more books about these characters, so that's great. I can't wait to see what else he comes up with, because this was just genuinely a great time. This is the most fun I've had with a debut novel. The Poet Empress is one of the best debut novels I've read in a while. I would not call it fun necessarily, but it is very good. The Red Winter is very fun. It's really, really fun from start to finish. I had a great time with it. The next book that I want to talk about is a nonfiction book, and that is The First Ghosts by Irving Finkel. This is a nonfiction book about ghost beliefs in ancient Mesopotamia, in Assyria and Babylon, and that part of the world. And Irving Finkel is a world-renowned cuneiform expert. He has translated many of the cuneiform tablets regarding ghost beliefs and ghost practices himself, and he explicates them very interestingly in this book. I really enjoy the perspective that he takes on the whole thing. He very much wants us to understand that ghost belief wasn't really belief in the way that we conceptualize belief systems today. It was not just like a religious ritual or a symbolic thing. It was a part of everyday life. It was an accepted part of everyday life. Ghosts were just there. They just existed, right? And some of that is tied to the way in which ancient Mesopotamians handled their dead. Oftentimes you would bury your dead relatives under your house, right? There were occasionally cemeteries, occasionally you would have a separate tomb, but often you would just bury your dead parents under the floorboards, right? That's just what you would do. And you would be expected to continue to consult them, to continue to assist them and provide for them in the afterlife. And it was just a part of everyday life, right? There's a great passage in here that sort of explains, I think sort of explains, kind of in a nutshell, the entire sort of thesis of this book. So it says, the paradigm in which death and the departure of the ghost take place in everyday life is of a ballooning anti-vacuum nature, where it is unneedful to ask ourselves whether, so to speak, Mesopotamians actually believed one or other parts of the whole, or one aspect as opposed to another. If you asked a Babylonian whether the Arutu offering pipe, perhaps 3 feet in length in his yard, really reached down to the netherworld, for example, which everyone knew at one and the same time to lie at a depth beyond imagination, 100 leagues, some say, he would look at you without replying, because the question has no validity. Inherited traditions about the big experiences were registered and propagated by a part of the mind where such interrogation had no place. There was an embracing conceptual system that was socially and psychologically functional, and the toing and froing with their very human ghosts was no symbolic artificial construction in lieu of active belief, but part of life itself. So that's what he's really getting at here, right? Is that ghosts for these people were, it's not, do you believe in ghosts, right? Ghosts were just a part of everyday life, and you had to deal with them one way or another. And so that was this was a really interesting read. A little bit dense at times, a little bit slow going at times, I think, but I'm glad I read it. it was interesting and illuminating. I think it illuminates a lot about, how Mesopotamian culture works. I think you can learn a lot about how a culture operates by studying and learning about how that culture deals with its dead and what that culture believes about the dead and what happens when you die, right? So, yeah, in that vein, this was a very interesting read. So, we're almost done. The penultimate read of March for me was This House Will Feed by Maria Tarode. This is a gothic horror novel set in Ireland during the potato famine in the mid-19th century. Our main character is a woman who has lost her entire family to starvation, and she is sort of recruited by a wealthy woman to impersonate her daughter for sort of legal purposes, so that she can sort of keep her estate running and keep the people, her tenants, right, from starvation. This young woman is asked to impersonate the daughter of this older lady, and she has to move to this house, and the house is maybe haunted. There's something maybe supernatural going on here, and possibly there is danger afoot. I really enjoyed this book. I think this book is more atmospheric than it is just straight up scary, but that is kind of my preference for horror anyway. I tend to prefer more atmospheric, creeping kinds of horror to things that are more explicit or jump scary. This is one of those books that is very much, the horror that is here is mostly a horror that is, the horror of what people are capable of doing to each other, right? As you may or may not know, the Irish potato famine, which in Ireland is known as simply as the Great Hunger, was essentially an act of genocide by the English government towards the people of Ireland. They were allowed to starve to death in their millions, and the English crown did nothing to stop it. They could have, because it was only the potatoes that were affected by this blight, but the English crown would rather that the other crops got sent back to England than be used to actually feed the people who were growing the crops. So the Irish potato famine was a horrific act of genocide, one of the worst in the modern age. And so the horror in this book, a lot of it is just the horror of what people are capable of doing to each other. And again, like, that's kind of the horror that I like anyway, so I was into it. This was I would not call it a fun read, right? It's not a fun read. It's heavy. There's a lot of heavy stuff in here. This is another book that definitely has some content warnings at the front of it that I would recommend heeding if you have any potential triggers, but it's definitely, it's good. And it's an interesting amalgamation of Irish history with some Irish folklore and some good character work, and I definitely enjoyed how it sort of comes together. It's also kind of a dual timeline story where we see how she gets to this point and also what she's doing in the quote-unquote present of like 1848 or whatever. It's good. I liked it. So this is that's what I have to say about This House Will Feed. I think it's definitely worth your time. I believe this may also be a debut. Oh, I think it's an adult debut. I think she has written, yeah, I think she's written some like middle grade stuff, but this is her first adult novel, so there you go. And then my final read of the month was Son of the Morning by Akwaeke Emezi. This is a contemporary paranormal romantasy. Yeah. About a young woman who is from a sort of powerful witchy family who meets and falls in love with Lucifer. So this is a Lucifer romance, and our young woman, Galilee, her name is Galilee or Gally, she's often called, is a very special person, and she's maybe not actually human. She thinks she's human, but there's something very special about her that makes her different from her rather powerful family. So this was fun. This is you know, it's well written. Akwaeke Emezi is very good at writing. They have a great prose and very vivid prose. This book is very explicit. It's smutty. There's some polyamory going on here, which is great. Love that for us. It's not purely heterosexual, which is amazing. And it was fun. It was a good time. It was basically exactly what I wanted it to be, which was a smutty, fun romantasy about Lucifer falling in love with a lady and possibly another dude. And it was well written, which is really all I ask from things like this, is that they are well written. And it was a quick read. It's only like maybe 300 pages long. So I think, you know, the only real issue I have with it is that it did feel really short. I think that's just because I am kind of used to reading stuff that's a lot more of a slow burn, and this is very much not a slow burn. The main action of this book takes place over the course of like 48 hours, and like I said, it's just barely like 300 pages long, so it moves at a really breakneck pace. But I was not necessarily looking for a slow burn with this book anyway. Like, I knew going into it that it probably wasn't going to be, and so that's fine. I'm just pointing out that if what you want is more of a slow burn, character development-y kind of thing, your better bet is to just watch the TV show Lucifer, which is much more of a slow burn. But this was fun. I definitely thoroughly enjoyed my time with this book. It's just, yeah, it's quite short, quite fast-paced. But I am, in fact, now rewatching the television show Lucifer because this made me want to rewatch it. So there you go. That is what I read in the month of March. I will talk a little bit about what I am currently reading. So I've got 3 reads on the go right now. So I am still reading The Witcher. So we're about halfway through Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski. And yeah, having a good time with it. It's a prequel, but it's good. I am just happy to still be in the world and still be with Geralt. I really like Geralt. He's one of my favorite himbos in all of literature, and so it's a good time. My other current read right now is City of Dragons by Robin Hobb. I'm about a third of the way through this one. It's quite short for a Robin Hobb book. Like, this is wildly short for a Robin Hobb book. But you know, again, this is volume 3 of the Rainwild Chronicles. I am having a good time with it. We're getting some interesting POVs here. I just had a Hest POV, which is the first time we've really seen Hest's POV, and we just got a Malta POV, which is great, because I haven't heard from Malta in a while, and I like Malta. As much as I disliked her in the first couple books of the Live Ship Traders, she's turned into a great character, which is, of course, one of the things that Robin Hobb is very good at, is transforming characters over time. So yeah, enjoying this one as well. And thirdly, I have started another nonfiction, and this is The Plantagenets by Dan Jones. And this is also, like, so far, I'm only like maybe 100 pages into it. So far, it's quite engaging and well written. I will say, like, most of this is stuff that I am already familiar with. I am relatively well familiar with English history up to about the Glorious Revolution. Um, I nearly did a history minor in college that would have been focused on late medieval, early modern English history. So I'm relatively well versed, I would say, in most of what's going on here, but I do enjoy a well written narrative popular history. And I will say, I think Dan Jones definitely lets his preferences and his biases seep through. I'm not saying that as a criticism necessarily. I think it's just a thing that is true of this book. He really likes Henry II, right? He thinks Henry II was a really great king. And look, I don't necessarily disagree with him, but he's definitely perfectly willing to put his opinion forward about that. And that is fine. And, you know, he's less glowingly interested in, you know, his son John, for instance, which again is like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I do think it's something that is good to know about books like this, because it just sort of depends on if you want that kind of thing or not. Like, if you want to have that flavor in your history nonfiction of, you know, the writer sort of being open about their preferences for some of these historical figures, and his opinion of Thomas Becket is maybe not the highest. He clearly, like, in the Henry II versus Thomas Becket thing, he clearly favors Henry II. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just true. It's just a fact of this book. And personally, I find it interesting and engaging. I don't mind it. I'm perfectly willing to disagree with an author if I think that their opinion is wrong. But, it doesn't bother me that he is expressing his preferences in this way, but it is something that he's doing. But yeah, it's an engagingly written narrative history, so I'm enjoying it. It's a good time. So yeah, that's what I am reading, and all those books I'm halfway through or less, so I don't really know what I have next on deck after those books. Probably the final book in the Rainwild Chronicles will be next. The final Witcher book will be after Season of Storms. And then I'll get to sort of some of my TBR books that I, did in that video last week, where I did my sort of pile of possibilities for the second quarter. I'll, try to work through some of those, and we'll see how we go. Otherwise, in terms of things that I'm watching, I have been watching movies. I've watched a few movies that I haven't even mentioned in videos yet. I just recently watched The Seventh Seal, which was great. Excellent film. I also watched a great Bette Davis film, The Letter, directed by William Wyler. I am also catching up with Bridgerton right now. I just started season 4 of Bridgerton, and I'm enjoying that. Bridgerton, to me, is like cotton candy. I don't want too much of it, but a little bit of it now and then is an enjoyable time. It's a good time. Too much of it, and it would probably just make me sick. But a little bit of it once in a while is a good time. I have also started rewatching Lucifer. It's been a few years. I really like Lucifer. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, honestly. And it's a good one. I honestly can't say enough good things about the TV show Lucifer. And yeah, otherwise, still watching The Pit. The Pit is almost done. I think there's maybe 2 more episodes left of The Pit to go in this season. And it's still a great show. Having a good time with it. Some upcoming films that I'm probably going to be seeing. in the coming days, weeks. The Drama, the new film starring Robert Pattinson and Zendaya, is out now, and I may try to catch that. Next week, You, Me, and Tuscany is out, and that's a nice, seems like a rom-com that I may enjoy. Regé Jean Page is in it, the guy from Bridgerton, and Halle Bailey, who is a pop singer and also starred as Ariel in the live-action Disney The Little Mermaid a couple years ago. I really like both of those actors. I'm hoping that this might be a fun and enjoyable rom-com. Those have been pretty thin on the ground lately. I would really like there to be a nice, decent, fluffy little rom-com that I can really just sink into and have a good time with. I would really like that to be this. I'd really like this to be that. We'll see. So yeah, that's what I've got coming up. That's all I've got. Let me know in the comments below what you've been reading in the month of March. Have you read any of these books? Several new-ish releases that I've read this past month. What did you think of them? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you looking forward to in April? Let me know all that in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!